Well, in other news, we explained to you last week how the FBI, the Idaho labs and things of that nature, were able to trace through family genealogy back to Brian Kohberger the DNA that was found at the scene. Well, Brian Kohberger's attorneys have filed a response, and they claim that the DNA evidence from 2 other men was found at the scene of the brutal killing of the 4 college students. And in their pleadings filed Thursday, the attorneys said there was no connection between the 28-year-old Kohberger and the students fatally stabbed in their campus housing there in Moscow, Idaho. There is no connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims, read the filing by attorney Jay Logsdon. In their pleadings, they specifically stated there is no connection between Mr. Kohberger and the victims. They go on to note that there is no explanation for the total lack of DNA evidence from the victims in Mr. Kohberger's apartment, office, home, or vehicle. And the filing states that by December 17th, 2022, lab analysts were aware of 2 additional male DNA suspects within the house where the deceased were located. The defense team stated a second male's DNA was found inside the Moscow home, and that the police allegedly found DNA from a third man on a glove discovered outside of the residence. To this date, the defense is unaware of what sort of testing, if any, was conducted on these samples other than the STR DNA profiles. The filings, an objection to the state's motion for a protective order, argues that the defense team should have access to all of the data and investigative genetic genealogy that led prosecutors to claim that Kohberger's DNA collected with a buccal swab was statistically matched to the DNA found on a knife sheath discovered at the scene. That's right, on the little button there. So last week, prosecutors claimed DNA found on the knife sheath left at the Idaho murder scene is a statistical match to a cheek swab taken from the suspect. The FBI said they used databases in publicly held DNA sites similar to 23andMe. Prosecutors argued that Kohberger had no right to the FBI data uncovered from the method. Now, in the filings, the defense team said, perhaps, unsurprisingly, Mr. Kohberger does not accept that his defense does not need this information. Of course, the defense is going to be entitled to what steps the FBI used in creating this DNA information because it is the basis of the challenge in this particular case. I'm pretty confident the defense is going to get it. The attorneys for Kohberger also state that apparently the state only wants to prevent Mr. Kohberger from seeing how the investigative genetic genealogy profile was created and how many other people the FBI chose to ignore during their investigation. Now, the filing accused the government of failing to release the information because somehow people will stop sharing their genetics if they were to realize the government is watching. I mean, we've already told you that already. Why would you do that? Anyway, detectives found a K-bar knife sheath on the bed with the bodies of Mogen and Gonsalves. The sheath was partially under Mogen's body and the comforter on the bed, according to court filings. There is currently a little under a month left for the prosecution to decide whether they will pursue the death penalty in this case. And there's been some reports that the prosecutors have met with the victims' families to discuss the issue of death, specifically with Kernodle's mother and Kara Northington. They favor prison for life for Kohberger if he's convicted. Her father, Jeff, on the other hand, is reportedly in favor of the death penalty for the alleged killings. The Gonsalves and the Mogens are in favor of the death penalty, and the Chapins have not made their position known to the public. So lots going on. Who knows? Maybe that's not going to be enough. Alternate suspects potentially being developed. Goes to the adequacy of the police investigation. Were they looking at all evidence and letting the chips fall where they may, or did they focus on one particular person, put their blinders on, and ignoring other individuals that could be suspects? Maybe there's a completely plausible explanation that the other possible suspects were completely cleared. My guess, though, is they weren't. All right, how not to act in court. Take a look at this guy. He was convicted of murdering an 11-year-old girl and her babysitter back in 1990. Well, did he punch his attorney, or was it just a, accident? Anyway, he was wrestled to the ground in court while they figured it out. Now, Joseph Zeiler was sentenced to death in the slaying of an 11-year-old named Robin Cornell and her babysitter, Lisa Story, who was also, sexually assaulted and suffocated. Now, while in front of the judge, Zeiler asked for the cameras in the room to be taken down before using an expletive and then elbowing his attorney, Kevin Shirley, in the face. Zeiler, who was arrested in 2016, 26 years after the cold case murders, was expected to plead with the judge against the jury's death sentence recommendation. But after the elbow was thrown, the judge asked Shirley if he was okay, the attorney, to which the attorney responded that he has taken harder hits before. The punch came after Zeiler, still in handcuffs, appeared to be quietly trying to deliver a message to his longtime attorney. It seemed like he didn't want our conversation to be picked up by the microphones, so he waved me down and I bent over, and he struck me, the attorney said. After being dragged back in, the man reportedly growled at the judge and those watching, exposing the words "killer" written on his teeth. Despite the shocking message inside his mouth, he refused to have relatives speak on his behalf, claiming that he is innocent. He said, "I have nothing to do with this. I maintain my innocence." The judge, following the recommendation of the jury, denied Zeiler's motion for a new trial and decided not to overturn his conviction. He was sentenced to death by the judge inside the courtroom several hours later. So back in September of 2016, police announced that they had arrested Zeiler, and he had been arrested for the killing after police matched his DNA to traces found at the scene. The semen was found on the bedsheet where Robin was sleeping, and it matched the defendant to a frequency of over 1 in 700 billion. So it would be 1 in 700 billion people. It would be his DNA. Pretty big numbers, although they can be manipulated. I get it, but that's pretty strong evidence. Why would his DNA be on there in a toddler's room, in a kid's room? Yeah, just saying. Anyway, Miss Story was looking after Cornell when Zeiler attacked them. Jan Cornell, Robin's mother, who had gone to stay at her boyfriend's home for the night, returned home the next day to find their bodies. The murders were counted among the most famous unsolved crimes and were actually featured on America's Most Wanted back in 2010. Please go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up for a background subscription service. You'll be happy you did. If there's anyone out there you were ever curious about what was in their background, now is the time to do it. If you're going to get involved with somebody, now is the time to do it. When you go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, you put in the name, literally millions of public records are searched, and a report is generated. And it's going to give you a report. If they have multiple social media accounts, you're going to find it. If they have multiple phone numbers, multiple email addresses, it's going to be found. And more importantly, you're going to get information regarding criminal history. Hopefully the person you're searching has none whatsoever. But if it's there, it's going to be found. You're going to get everything you'd want to know, whether you're going into business or whether you're going into a personal relationship. You're going to be able to find out the information you want to know. So go to CrimeTalkSearch.com, sign up today. You'll be happy you did. The Barry Morphew case. Guess what? They're back in court on a case that has been closed. Now, it could be months or even years before prosecutors believe that they have enough evidence to prove that Suzanne Morphew was murdered and bring the case to trial. The DA said that could be a long time. It could be quick. It could be long. It depends on a lot of our investigation, said the Deputy District Attorney, Mark Hurlburt. Now, Hurlburt is Linda Stanley's number 2. Linda Stanley didn't appear probably because she's being sued by Barry Morphew for alleged misconduct. Now, you say, Hurlburt, why do I know that name? Well, he's kind of been bouncing around the Western Slope for many years. In fact, he was the prosecutor on, that's right, he was the district attorney who prosecuted Kobe Bryant when he was charged with sexual assault in Eagle County years ago. He just kind of keeps hanging on. So in somewhat of a bold statement made in open court regarding the case that they had to dismiss, Hurlburt insisted that investigators suspect that they know where the body is. Hurlburt said that Suzanne Morphew's body is in a tough spot. We actually have more than just a feeling, and the sheriff's office continues to look for Mrs. Morphew's body, he stated. Now, I call BS on this. Really? You think you know where an alleged homicide has taken place, and you know where the body is, but you can't get there? I told you, when I'm flying across the western side of the slope, every time I fly over there, I think, it looks like all the snow's melted. But yet, they can't find Suzanne Morphew where they think the body is located? Listen, if they have search and rescue people that can find pieces of metal of a sub that was turned into a tin can 2 miles below the ocean floor, I really think that if they really believed they knew where Suzanne Morphew's body was, they would go get it. Well, there was a hearing called after Barry Morphew's attorneys requested to keep records in this case sealed indefinitely. Now, prosecutors back in March of 2022, before the case was ultimately dismissed, filed a motion to admit statements that Suzanne Morphew allegedly made to her best friend about the couple's failing marriage. Now, defense attorney Iris Itan accused prosecutors of operating on a hunch in going after Barry Morphew for the first-degree murder allegations. The Park County District Judge handling the case now, Amanda Hunter, ordered the records to be unsealed. Once unsealed, they could shed some light on Suzanne Morphew's mindset as she poured her heart out to her best friend, Sheila Oliver. Now, 3 months before Suzanne Morphew vanished from their couple's home near Salida, Colorado, Suzanne Morphew was planning to leave her husband, Barry Morphew, and they'd been married for some 25 years. The conversations, which revealed her spiraling marriage to her best friend, would have to be crucial to the prosecution's case had it ever gone to trial. Now, Morphew's thoughts were recorded on text on a spy pen and relayed to investigators through the memory of Oliver. The two met apparently while they were students at Purdue. The public heard some of those conversations during Barry Morphew's August 2021 four-day hearing through testimony of FBI Special Agent Ken Harris. Now, the details Suzanne Morphew's alleged comments to Oliver provided below came from Harris's testimony in open court. Heartfelt communications from Morphew strengthened the prosecution's theory in revealing evidentiary hearing that Morphew had reason to kill his wife on Mother's Day back in 2020. In the motion filed a month before Morphew's first-degree murder trial was scheduled to begin, the government wanted to get those statements admitted. But because Suzanne Morphew's body was missing, the case was dismissed without prejudice, which means they could refile the case, and since there's no statute of limitations if new evidence were to present itself. Now, prosecutors felt that they would have a better chance of convicting the father of two if they waited for stronger evidence. So to dismiss a case without prejudice means that the case can simply be retried. Morphew's attorney wanted the court to keep the case pretrial records under wraps to protect Mr. Morphew's constitutional rights. And when the case was dismissed, Morphew became a free man, and his attorney said, however, he has been struggling to get his life back to normal. Itan stated that there is a cloud of suspicion, unfortunately, that hangs over Mr. Morphew's head as a result of the prosecution's continued statements that they have a hunch that he had something to do with Mrs. Morphew's disappearance. She called the prosecution's words in pretrial motions untrue, inflammatory, and prejudicial. Now, Mr. Hurlburt said that everything filed has been the truth, well, except for one erroneous instance in one of their motions. Mr. Hurlburt said we're going to continue to look for her body, and we are simply trying to get this case prosecuted. At the time of her disappearance, Suzanne Morphew was having this long-distance affair with a high school flame and wanted to leave Barry to be close to the new flame. Now, according to the hearing, Morphew and Jeff Leibler, a Michigan father of 6, saw each other several times and fell in love. The affair was discovered when law enforcement found a spy pen in Suzanne Morphew's closet, which she purchased to place in Barry's vehicle because actually she suspected him of having an affair. In text messages and conversations relayed to investigators by Oliver, Suzanne Morphew wanted to leave her husband, who felt she was turning their two daughters, Macy and Mallory, against her. He pulled Macy in again and left. My heart hurts for her, Morphew texted. Whether that is against the defendant or against somebody else, we don't really know. Anyway, Macy Morphew was still in high school living at home, and her older sister Mallory was in college. Other statements revealed in the motion show Morphew felt her husband was too controlling and unstable. She described him to Oliver as narcissistic. Suzanne Morphew's phone was never found, but prosecutors were able to pull up her text messages by searching Oliver's phone. Now, Barry Morphew has maintained his innocence in Suzanne Morphew's death since the day she was reported missing on May 10th of 2020. And after nearly a year of investigation, the Chaffee County Sheriff's arrested Morphew in connection with his wife's murder. He was released on bail the following September after the preliminary hearing, when the judge, Patrick Murphy, ordered him bound over for trial to the district court. Now, it was noted that it shows how hard it is to control the curious public in a high-profile case, because the hearing was being broadcast via WebEx. And one of the people that was observing the hearing logged in as Barry killed Suzanne. Needless to say, Mr. Morphew's attorney was not amused by that, and the judge stopped the proceeding and removed that unknown listener for obviously failing to follow court protocol and etiquette. Can't do that. Obviously, we'll give Barry Morphew the presumption of innocence. As I've stated before, I know both of his attorneys. They're very good attorneys, and if you go back and look at any of the videos that we talked about during that time period, I had a feeling they were going to prevail. That's just the way it is. They're very, very good attorneys. Has the Delphi murder suspect confessed? Well, the Delphi double murder suspect apparently, allegedly, according to the prosecution, has confessed to killing his two alleged victims on at least 5 separate occasions since his arrest, according to newly unsealed court documents that also reveal that they were killed with a sharp object. Now, Richard Allen is accused of killing Libby German and Abby Williams while they were hiking through Indiana's Delphi historic trails on February 13th of 2017. Now, prosecutors allege that Allen has made several phone calls to his wife, Kathy, and his mother while at the Indiana Department of Corrections, in which he admits to killing the two girls. The motion states, and this is a motion to get some records, and they're outlining why they think they should be entitled to it. The motion from the prosecution states, on April 3rd, 2023, Richard M. Allen called his wife, Kathy. In that phone call, Richard Allen admits several times that he killed Abby and Libby. Investigators transcribed the phone call, confirming that Richard Allen admits that he committed the murder of Abigail Williams and Liberty German. He admits several times within the phone call that he committed the offenses as charged. His wife, Kathy Allen, then abruptly ends the call and hangs up. Now, the document also contains multiple mentions of instances where Allen was acting different while being locked up, including times where he was eating paper from his attorneys. Now, Richard Allen was wetting down and his paperwork he had received from his attorneys and was eating it, was refusing to eat and refusing to sleep. He would go days without sleep, and he further broke the table that he used to text messages and phone calls. He went from making up to 2 phone calls a day on April 3rd of 2023 to not making any phone calls at all. Well, what have I told you many, many times here over the years, ladies and gentlemen? It's always the defendant's own words that come back and bite them. And in this particular case, I am sure that his attorneys told Mr. Allen not to talk about the facts of the case with anyone other than his attorneys. But they just can't help themselves. The defendants must talk about their case. And one of the best sources of information comes from jail calls, because the people need to tell the people on the outside why they're on the inside. And of course, they either deny it or say, oh man, I really messed up, or what have you. And so we advise clients all the time, do not talk about the facts of the case on the phone. We put it in writing. And guess what? In nearly every homicide case, what do we get? Recordings from phone calls, because they simply download those documents. And it's simple. Back in the day, It was hard work to get phone calls. Now it's like downloading music to your phone. It's that simple. It's all digital. And guess what? You have to document your little PIN identification number saying who's making the phone calls. That's right. Well, some of the released documents also reveal that both of the young girls, Abby and Libby, had wounds caused by a sharp object, and article of clothing were missing from the scene. Now, the filings allege that they also determined that the girls' clothing were missing from the scene, including a pair of underwear and a pair of socks. Libby's iPhone was discovered under her body and contained that 43-second video that helped investigators piece this case together. Now, the Allen County judge, Francis Gull, has released 118 documents in this case, with only 19 remaining sealed. Yes, great job, Judge. The public is entitled to know. Now, details of Allen's other alleged confessions have not been shared. He is said to have broken the tablet he used to make texts and send phone calls, and is not believed to have called or texted anyone in months, probably because attorneys told him to shut your mouth. Oh, you want to go to prison for the rest of your life? Have your own words used against you. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, that is what they refer to as admission by a party opponent. That's why anything you say can and will be used against you. He's a party to that lawsuit. The people of the state of Indiana versus Richard Allen. Anything he says can and will be used against him. Not just what is said to the police. People just never seem to realize that. Well, as we know, investigators also searched the home of Richard Allen and several outbuildings, including a shed and Richard Allen's car, looking for firearms and knives. The police also scoured the home for electronic devices, clothing, and a specific cell phone. Law enforcement recovered numerous items, including boots, multiple knives and sweatshirts, multiple cell phones, an iPod, a hard drive laptop, and other electronics. Now, the affidavit released from November 2022 shows that an unspent .40 caliber round was found between the teenagers' bodies, and it was later linked to Allen's Sig Sauer Model P226 firearm through forensic evidence. Prosecutors believe the gun links Allen directly to the case after forensics determined a bullet found next to the girl's body had cycled through the gun. Needless to say, Allen's defense attorneys are contesting that evidence from the Indiana State Police lab, and they have also argued that Mr. Allen has been under great physical and mental duress because of his incarceration, arguing that any admissions of guilt must be unreliable. Prosecutors have countered that, saying that Allen's behavior has changed dramatically since his admissions made on April 3rd, probably because his attorney told him to shut up. And the court documents have also revealed that he has not made a single phone call since that admission and has undergone a psychiatric evaluation. And let's not forget, when Mr. Allen was first interviewed in regards to this case back in 2017, he told officers that he had been on the scene at the time of the murders to watch the fish. Authorities then chose to re-interview him on the matter back in October of 2020. Well, the reason they had to go back and re-interview him was because an FBI contractor misfiled the interview where he put himself at the scene. So that's why they went back in 2022. And Mr. Allen has also admitted that he had clothing similar to that guy known as the bridge guy that was captured in that video. Now, Kathy Allen also confirmed to police that her husband owned several firearms and knives, as well as the blue Carhartt jacket similar to the one worn by bridge guy. Now, obviously, he's pled not guilty, and we'll give him the presumption of innocence. Remember, the defense has also said that they have the wrong guy, that the affidavit is flimsy, and they expected more. Well, Mr. Allen is being held without bail, and he is scheduled for trial on January 8th of 2024.